What if, what if your body just seems determined to hold on to fat? You've tried diets, exercise, everything,
Yeah.
and nothing shifts.
Yeah, it's incredibly frustrating.
And what if there was a way to actually tap into your own, huge energy reserves? We're talking tens of thousands of calories stored away.
Yeah.
Even if you feel like you have a slow metabolism, you've hit a wall, or you're dealing with things like menopause or thyroid issues.
Right, and the idea isn't just cutting back calories you eat. It's more about a strategic shift, changing your metabolism so you start burning the fat you're already carrying.
Targeting the root cause, basically.
Exactly, the stuff that blocks fat burning for so many people.
That's the metabolic shift we're really going deep on today. We've got some really detailed information here, laying out a specific, pretty intense set of strategies designed for maximum fat loss, especially for those, stubborn cases. So our mission really is to unpack these ideas, go step by step, pull out the core concepts, the practical things you can do, just to give you a really clear picture of this approach and, importantly, why it might actually work when other things haven't.
Yeah, trying to make the complex biology and nutrition side of things make sense, show you the why behind what this material suggests.
Okay, let's get into it. The foundation, like the absolute starting point, is getting your body into ketosis. Now, most people kind of know keto means burning fat for fuel instead of sugar.
Right.
Usually keeping carbs low, maybe 20, 50 grams a day, somewhere in there.
That's your standard keto, yeah. But this strategy, the one outlined here, it pushes that. It aims to get your daily carb intake as close to zero as possible.
Whoa, okay. Close to zero. That sounds really extreme. Is there anything left to eat, carb-wise?
Well, there are a few key exceptions, not because they add significant carbs, but because they're seen as crucial for health, and actually, they help the fat-burning process.
Ah, okay. Like what?
Things like non-starchy leafy vegetables, spinach, kale, lettuce, that sort of thing. Pretty much no limit on those. A little bit of lemon juice is fine, adds flavor, has benefits.
Okay.
Eggs have a tiny amount of carbs, but they're packed with nutrients. And maybe, down the line, some specific seeds might be okay.
So why hang on to even those tiny carb sources? Why not just go full carnivore, just meat and fat?
This is actually one of the really interesting points in the material. It comes down to micronutrients, minerals, but critically, it's about the fiber. And that fiber isn't really for us to digest.
It's for the gut microbes, right? I feel like we always come back to the gut.
We do, and it's vital here. If you connect this to stubborn weight, those plateaus, insulin resistance, the health of your gut bacteria is key. Most of them live in your large intestine, the colon.
Okay.
They eat the fiber that passes through undigested. And when they ferment it, they produce these things called short-chain fatty acids. The big one we care about here is butyrate.
Butyrate, right. I remember that name. What's its role here, specifically for fat loss?
Butyrate is fascinating. It does a few things. It actually feeds the cells lining your colon, keeps that gut barrier strong. But for metabolism and weight loss, the major thing highlighted here is its power, its significant ability to help restore normal insulin levels. It improves insulin sensitivity.
Okay, wait, so you cut carbs to almost zero, and you eat loads of specific veggies to feed the gut bugs, who then make butyrate, which then helps fix insulin resistance. Is that the core loop for, unblocking a slow metabolism?
That's precisely it. Insulin resistance is probably the #1 roadblock for so many people trying to lose weight, especially if they're older or have metabolic challenges.
Right.
It means your body isn't using insulin properly, so your pancreas just keeps pumping out more and more. And high insulin, it's like a deadbolt on your fat cells. It literally stops your body releasing and burning stored fat.
So this approach is like a two-pronged attack.
Exactly. You lower insulin directly by cutting carbs way down, and you improve insulin sensitivity through gut health thanks to that butyrate. You're essentially picking the lock on those fat cells.
And the material really pushes high vegetable intake for this, like 7 to 10 cups a day. That sounds like a lot.
It is a lot, yeah. That's the target recommended here, though it does say, work up to it if that feels like too much at first. And besides the fiber and butyrate, all those veggies provide critical minerals like potassium and magnesium. And those also help lower insulin resistance. So it all works together.
Okay, so super low carbs, tons of leafy greens for fiber, gut health, minerals. Got it. What about protein and fat, the other big players?
Protein, the recommendation is moderate. The material suggests around 3 to 6 ounces per meal, maybe a bit more if you're a larger person or if you're eating fewer meals, like 1 or 2 a day.
And fat, Because keto usually means really high fat, doesn't it? Like 70–75% of your calories.
Standard keto, often yes. But here's a really key difference in this specific approach, especially if you have a sluggish metabolism. The advice is to get most of your fat with your protein from whole foods. Meaning, rather than taking lean protein, like a chicken breast, and then adding lots of extra oil or butter or relying heavily on like fat bombs or protein shakes, you focus on foods where the fat and protein come naturally packaged together.
Okay, why? Why is that distinction, fat with protein versus adding fat to lean protein, so important?
Because, according to this material, lean protein on its own, without much fat alongside it, can actually cause a bigger insulin spike than protein that comes with fat.
Ah, okay. So like chicken thigh with skin versus skinless breast.
Exactly. And since keeping insulin low is the absolute name of the game here for allowing fat burning, getting your fat combined with protein helps minimize that potential insulin spike. It's strategic.
So the types of protein really matter then?
Hugely.
Yeah.
You want to generally avoid the very lean stuff, skinless chicken, really lean ground meat, lean white fish, unless you're consciously adding a good amount of fat back. And definitely avoid protein powders, especially whey, which can spike insulin quite a bit.
So what are the preferred protein sources mentioned?
Fatty fish, like salmon, get a big thumbs up. Great fat and protein, plus they're loaded with omega-3s, DHA, good for the brain, reduces inflammation, which is another thing that can mess with weight loss.
Right.
Other fatty fish, too. Grass-fed beef is good. Pasture-raised eggs are recommended. Duck eggs, I'd really get a special mention as being really beneficial, especially for the liver. And seafood, generally, for trace minerals like zinc and selenium.
What about chicken and pork? Are they okay?
The material advises caution there unless you know it's high quality, like grass-fed pork or pasture-raised, non-GMO fed chicken. And if you eat chicken, keep the skin on for the fat content. Be careful with processed stuff like bacon, too. Check for nitrates or added sugar.
Okay, let's circle back to the total fat target then. Because 70–75% fat is what people hear for keto. You said this approach changes the ratio for slower metabolisms.
Yeah, it's quite different. The target here is actually closer to 55% of calories from fat, maybe 39% from protein, and just that tiny, tiny fraction, like 1% from non-veggie carbs, plus, of course, all those mandatory leafy greens.
Okay, 55% fat. It's way lower than typical keto. Why would you reduce the fat percentage when the goal is burning fat? It feels backward.
This is a really key insight, especially for people who've maybe tried standard keto installed. The thinking is if you eat too much fat from your diet, especially early on, or if your metabolism is really resistant, your body will just burn the fat you ate instead of being forced to switch over and burn your own stored body fat.
Ah, okay, that makes sense. So you need enough fat to feel full and fuel yourself, but not so much that your body never bothers accessing its own reserves.
You got it. Enough fat helps with satiety, helps you go longer without eating, which is vital for the fasting part we'll get to. But as you adapt and the main goal becomes burning body fat, the target in this plan settles around, say, 75 grams of total fat per day, maybe a little less for some.
Not too low either.
Right. Don't want to go too low and run into deficiencies or feel awful. It's a balance.
75 grams of fat. Still a bit hard to picture. Can you give us some examples? Like, what does that look like on a plate, roughly, for a whole day?
Sure. The material gives some examples of daily totals. It's not about, drinking olive oil. It might look like, say, an 8-ounce salmon fillet cooked with maybe 2 tablespoons of butter or olive oil.
Okay.
Or maybe eating about 8 strips of good quality bacon. Another one was sardines packed in oil, maybe with a bit of brie cheese, though dairy is generally avoided early on.
Gotcha.
Or an 8-ounce burger patty, maybe some brie again, and a tablespoon of olive oil on a big salad. Or 4 ounces of tuna mixed with like 8 strips of bacon and an egg cooked in a tablespoon of oil.
Okay, that helps. So it's combining fatty proteins with some healthy added fats, but not going crazy overboard.
Exactly. And a huge point here is avoiding those inflammatory seed and vegetable oils. Corn oil, soybean oil, safflower, sunflower. The material stresses these can actually make insulin resistance worse and stop your progress.
So stick to olive oil, coconut oil, butter, avocado oil, animal fats.
Precisely. And prioritize omega-3 sources where you can, like from that fatty fish.
Okay, let's just quickly recap the main avoid list in this specific approach, particularly for someone with a slower metabolism.
Right. So generally avoid nuts at first. They can have hidden carbs, be tough to digest, cause bloating, maybe slow things down. If you do add them back later, macadamia nuts are mentioned as being fattiest and lower in oxalates.
Okay.
Most dairy is also out initially. Yogurt, milk, kefir, potential for inflammation, digestion issues, constipation, plus some carbs. A tiny splash of heavy cream in coffee is usually seen as okay.
Right.
Then, as we said, avoid lean protein sources unless you add fat back. No protein powders, especially whey. No berries. Initially, they're higher carb than leafy greens.
Got it.
Avoid the starchy vegetables like corn, peas, beets, carrots, tomatoes, squash, at least at the start. The material does note that some of those, like tomatoes, squash, carrots, beets, peas, might be okay later if your metabolism picks up, but corn is usually a no-go, often due to GMO concerns mentioned.
And the oils.
And definitely avoid those inflammatory seed and vegetable oils. Stick to the good stuff.
Okay, that lays out the what to eat and what to avoid really clearly. Now, let's move into the tools and sort of hacks designed to speed things up and break through those really tough plateaus. Intermittent fasting. That seems absolutely fundamental here.
It really is. And the guiding principle is, well, it sounds simple, but it's powerful. Do not eat unless you are actually genuinely hungry.
Yes.
Because if you're not hungry, your body is probably already burning its own fat stores. And the second you eat, that process stops.
That's a huge mental shift.
Yeah.
So how do you get to the point where you can fast for longer periods? You don't just jump into 20-hour fasts.
Oh, no, definitely not. The approach recommended is gradual. First, you nail the diet. 3 meals a day, no snacks, ultra-low carb, the right fats and proteins we discussed. As your insulin drops and you get more metabolically flexible, hunger naturally starts to decrease.
Okay.
Then you just start pushing breakfast a bit later each day, maybe 9 a.m., then 10 a.m., then noon. Eventually it just disappears and you find you're only hungry for 2 meals.
Lunch and dinner, typically.
Yeah. Usually, yeah. And from there, you can continue to shrink that eating window. Maybe push lunch later, finish dinner earlier, until you're comfortable eating just 1 meal a day. That's OMAD, 1 meal a day.
And OMAD naturally creates a long fasting window.
It does, often around 20 hours fasting with maybe a 4-hour eating window. The material describes an ideal window being something like, say, eating between 1 p.m. and 5 p.m., then fasting for the next 20 hours.
How do you know if it's working properly? How do you know you're adapting well to intermittent fasting?
The key sign is hunger. Ideally, your hunger should significantly decrease or even disappear for long stretches. If you're trying this and you're constantly ravenous, just white-knuckling it, the material suggests that's a big clue that insulin resistance is probably still pretty high. But as that hunger fades, that's your body telling you it's successfully switching over to burning stored fat.
Okay, but what about those people, the really tough cases? They've done OMAD, they're doing everything right, and the scale just won't budge.
For those extreme plateaus, or maybe someone with a very, very slow metabolism, the material presents a more advanced option, which is eating 1 meal every other day.
Whoa. 1 meal, then nothing for almost 48 hours, then another meal. That sounds incredibly hard, almost like starving yourself.
The material is quite clear on this point. If you have significant body fat stores, it's not starvation. You're running primarily on your stored energy, your body fat, during that extended fasting period.
Okay.
It's definitely an advanced strategy, an option for people who need to create a much bigger energy deficit and really force their body to rely heavily on its own fat reserves to break through a serious stall. It's not for everyone, and you definitely want to work up to it after mastering OMAD.
Makes sense. So beyond daily fasting, does the material talk about even longer fasts done less frequently?
Yes, periodic prolonged fasting. So going beyond 24 hours, maybe doing a 48-hour fast or even a 72-hour fast occasionally, perhaps once a month or so.
And why would someone do that? What are the supposed benefits?
The material highlights some really powerful potential benefits. Things like boosting stem cell production, potentially even growing new brain cells, a significant drop in inflammation markers, and even potential anti-cancer effects. The idea being that tumors struggle to survive purely on ketones.
Okay, those are some major claims.
Yeah.
If someone wanted to explore a longer fast, say 48 or 72 hours, what are the recommendations?
The key advice is approach it gradually, especially the first time. See how your body responds. You need to make sure your mineral and vitamin reserves are adequate. Supplementation is strongly recommended during these longer fasts.
That's what?
Electrolytes are crucial. Potassium, magnesium, calcium, sodium. The material suggests using sea salt, maybe about a teaspoon spread through the day. And nutritional yeast is recommended for B vitamins.
Okay.
Staying really well hydrated is also a vital aim for 2 to 3 liters of water daily, maybe more if you're exercising and sweating. And adding a tablespoon or 2 of lemon juice or apple cider vinegar to your water is suggested.
Why the lemon or ACV?
To help prevent kidney stones. That can sometimes be a risk with ketosis if urine gets too concentrated. The acidity helps.
Got it. Okay, so diet fasting. What other sort of hacks or lifestyle factors are mentioned to help accelerate things or just support the whole process?
One interesting one is rotating your eating times. So if you're doing OMAD, don't always eat at, say, 2 p.m. every single day. Mix it up. Eat at 4 p.m. one day, 1 p.m. the next.
Keep the body guessing.
Kind of, yeah. The idea is to prevent your body from fully adapting and maybe slowing your metabolism down. Same principle applies to doing those longer periodic fasts. Don't do them on a strict, predictable schedule. Keep it irregular.
Okay. Apple cider vinegar came up again with fasting. Is it generally recommended outside of just long fasts?
Yes, it's presented as quite important in this whole approach, specifically because of its impact on insulin resistance. The suggestion is taking 1 to 2 tablespoons in a big glass of water, maybe with that lemon juice too, because it directly helps lower insulin levels.
What about stress and sleep? How critical are they?
Oh, absolutely crucial. Non-negotiable, really. High stress, high cortisol, that directly messes with insulin sensitivity and makes weight loss much harder.
So stress reduction techniques.
Yeah, incorporating those is important. The material suggests something as simple as long walks on days you don't do intense workouts. And sleep. Sleep is mandatory.
Why mandatory?
Because getting enough quality sleep helps regulate insulin, stabilizes blood sugar, reduces cravings, and a lot of actual fat burning happens while you sleep. So aiming for around 8 hours is key. Naps can help too.
Does supplementation help with sleep?
It can, yeah. Getting enough electrolytes and B vitamins, as mentioned, can often improve sleep quality. Your actual need for sleep might shift a bit as you adapt metabolically, but getting sufficient restful sleep is always vital.
Okay, last piece. Exercise. Where does that fit in?
Well, in this specific context, exercise is viewed as responsible for maybe only about 15% of the actual weight loss compared to the diet and fasting. But it's still really important for other reasons, like building antioxidant defenses and overall health.
Is there a best time or type of exercise recommended?
Yes. The best time, according to this material, for maximizing fat burning and getting the best hormonal response is exercising in a fasted state.
Okay. And type. Intensity.
High intensity seems to be favored. It spikes growth hormone the most, especially when combined with fasting. Sprinting is given as a prime example, doing short, intense bursts, like maybe 7 cycles of 30-second all-out sprints.
But you could adapt that.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
Apply the principle to biking, a spin class, other kinds of aerobic intervals. The goal is that high intensity to stimulate growth hormone, which is a major fat-burning hormone.
Interesting.
But what's really fascinating is the comparison made in the material. Fasting itself spikes growth hormone way more dramatically than exercise alone, like potentially 2,000% increase in men, 1,300% in women during prolonged fasting, compared to maybe 700% from sprinting.
Wow. So fasting is seen as an even more powerful growth hormone trigger than intense exercise.
Based on this information, yes. But exercise still gives a significant boost and has loads of other benefits. The material suggests focusing on full-body exercises initially, things like burpees, planks, plyometrics, jump rope, spinning, rather than just isolating muscles with weights right away.
And how long should these workouts be? How often?
For interval training, the sweet spot mentioned is around 20 to 40 minutes. Going much longer could risk overtraining, which can actually stop progress. As for frequency, especially if you're over 40, maybe start with just once or twice a week. Ease into it.
Recovery is important too, I assume.
Absolutely key. You want to work hard enough to get sore, let yourself fully recover, and then go again. If you never get sore, you might need to bump up the intensity or volume to keep stimulating change.
Okay, so pulling this all together, it's not just one single thing, is it? It's really a collection of tools that are designed to work together.
Absolutely. Think of it like a very specific toolkit. You've got the diet ultra-low-carb, keto style, but with that specific focus on fat with protein and lots of fibrous veggies. You've got intermittent fasting, maybe escalating to prolonged fasting if needed. And then all the supporting lifestyle factors, ACV, stress management, sleep, strategic exercise.
And the idea is you can combine these, sort of dial up the intensity depending on where you are and what you need.
Exactly. That's the flexibility described here. You start with the diet, maybe add IF. If things slow down, you push to OMAD. Hit a really stubborn wall. Okay, maybe try an every other day meal schedule for a bit, or a 48-hour fast. You adjust the tools based on your body's response.
So understanding all this gives you not just a plan A, but also plans B, C, and D if you hit roadblocks.
That's the goal, yeah. To empower you with the knowledge of why each piece works, how it addresses those underlying metabolic issues, so you can fine-tune the approach and find what keeps your body consistently in that fat-burning mode.
It really makes you think. If just strategically changing when you eat can have such a profound impact on fat burning and hormones, like this material suggests, what other incredibly powerful natural systems are just waiting inside us, ready to be optimized with simple, smart adjustments?
It's a great question. It definitely shifts the perspective from fighting your body to maybe finally learning how to work with it by giving it the right signals.
Absolutely. Well, if you found this deep dive valuable, if you uncovered some insights that resonated or might help someone you know, please do us a favor. Help more people find this information by liking this video or episode and subscribing to the channel. It really helps get it out there.
Yeah, we appreciate that.
Thanks so much for joining us for this deep dive.